Wow, you weren't kidding when you said this one was wild. It's like someone took like ambition and morality, cutting edge science, a dash of the supernatural even, threw it all into a blender and just said go.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's amazing how quickly we go from a story about, just a brilliant but kind of eccentric cosmologist to this high stakes game of power and influence, really. And the deeper we dive, those two worlds just get like more and more intertwined.
And we're diving into all of this from just this single source document. That's a lot to cover.
It really is. But that's part of what makes it so interesting, It's like we're putting together this giant puzzle, and every character, every little event adds this whole other layer of complexity to it.
Okay, so let's start putting those pieces together then. Where do we even begin with a story this intricate?
Well, I think at the heart of it all is Anup Rajan, this young Sri Lankan cosmologist, and he's trying to make sense of the universe.
Right. And not just like crunching numbers. He's not just looking through telescopes, right? This is a guy who sees connections everywhere, even between things like music and someone's personality. You can tell right away he's not afraid to push the boundaries of, conventional thinking.
That music personality system he comes up with is a perfect example of that, I think. Makes you wonder if he sees the universe itself as like some kind of symphony, with these hidden patterns and harmonies just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, it reminds me of that old saying, music is the universal language. But Anoop seems to be taking that pretty literally.
He's definitely not afraid to blur the lines between disciplines at all. And this unconventional approach, it's what leads him to his groundbreaking work with dark matter.
Which, as we know, becomes central to his involvement with the Sentinel Project.
Exactly. But before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, I think it's important to understand the other key players in this story.
You mean the Sentinel Project themselves? Like this mysterious group with like seemingly unlimited resources and a mission to change the world.
Exactly. Led by Henry, a man haunted by his father's legacy and driven by this idealistic vision of a better future.
It sounds like he's carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders,
Hmm.
trying to, live up to those expectations while also navigating the complexities of this whole project.
And then you have the other members of the project, each with their own motivations and baggage. Like Kurt, a man wrestling with the ghosts of his past, seeking redemption for his actions during, a dark chapter in human history.
His story is, it's really poignant. To go from being forced to perform eye surgery on innocent villagers in Nazi Germany
Yeah.
to dedicating your life to improving the lives of others, that's quite a journey.
Yeah, it really is. It speaks to the profound impact that trauma can have on a person's life, but also the capacity for change and the desire to atone for past mistakes as well.
And then there's Gopal. Talk about a character straight out of a suspense novel. A ruthless businessman willing to do whatever it takes to get his hands on the Sentinel Project's funding.
Gopal embodies that cutthroat ambition that we see so often in these kinds of stories. He's a stark contrast to someone like Anoop, who seems driven by a genuine desire to understand the universe and use that knowledge for good.
And let's not forget the women caught in the crosshairs of all this ambition and intrigue. Women like Nadia, trapped in this abusive household, desperate for a way out, and Serini, torn between her loyalty to the orphanage and the risky plan she's been drawn into.
Their stories add another layer of complexity to this whole narrative, really highlighting the human cost of these grand ambitions.
It's like what they say, the best stories are the ones that remind us we're all connected, even in the most unexpected ways.
And as we get further into this particular story, those connections, they become more and more apparent.
So we've got our brilliant but unconventional cosmologist, a secretive organization with a savior complex, a cast of characters with their own hidden agendas, and a whole lot of moral ambiguity brewing beneath the surface. Where do we go from here?
Well, the next chapter in our story takes us to the heart of the Sentinel Project's selection process, really, because it's not just Anoop vying for their attention and funding.
Oh, so this is where we meet the competition.
Hmm.
The other projects vying for a chance to change the world.
Exactly. And each one presents its own unique set of challenges, opportunities, and ethical dilemmas.
It's almost hard to believe that from just this one document, we're getting, three completely distinct proposals, each with like the potential to change the world in such different ways.
Yeah.
It's like choosing between apples, oranges, and, well, I don't know, a spaceship or something.
That's a great analogy. And the spaceship in this case is definitely a Noop's Dharmat project.
Yep.
But before we get into the complexities of using dark matter to treat depression and all that, let's look at the other contenders. The apples and oranges, so to speak.
Sounds good to me. Where do we start?
Well, you've got Gopal's renewable energy project, which on the surface seems like, like a no-brainer, right? I mean, who wouldn't want clean, sustainable energy, for millions of people?
Yeah, exactly. But remember, this is still Gopal we're talking about here. A man who honestly wouldn't know a moral compass if it like came up and whacked him in the face.
Which is why it's so interesting, I think, to see how he positions this whole project. He goes beyond just, just the practical benefits of solar power and all that, and he really taps into this, like, deeper human desire for progress, for innovation.
He really played up the whole Sri Lanka leaping into the future angle, didn't he?
Oh, he did. He did. Promising cutting-edge technology, new jobs, a brighter future for generations to come. You name it. It's classic Gopal, if you ask me. Packaging ambition as altruism.
And let's not forget that whole, what was it, the government contract thing.
Mm-hmm.
Was that ever actually confirmed as legitimate?
There's definitely some ambiguity surrounding that whole document, for sure. It's never explicitly stated whether Gopal, forged it or somehow, like, pulled strings to secure a deal that just happened to, benefit his agenda.
Which, knowing Gopal is, I mean, it's entirely plausible. He's like a master chess player, always thinking, like, 5 steps ahead.
Exactly. And just when you think you've got him figured out, he throws that whole divine intervention curveball.
Oh, you mean like the apparition? The one that Jan and Andy witnessed at the warehouse. Talk about a power move. I mean, whether it was like totally staged or some genuine supernatural occurrence, it definitely played into Gopal's hands.
It definitely made an impression on Jack, at least. And, he holds a lot of sway over the other Sentinel members, especially given, how religious he is.
Speaking of the Sentinel members, I'm actually kind of curious about how their individual biases played into their perception of these different projects. You know what I mean? It's like you've got this group of people, each with their own backgrounds, their own experiences, beliefs, and they're trying to decide the fate of, like, literally millions of people. That's got to be a lot of pressure.
It is, and it's really fascinating to see how those individual perspectives end up shaping their reactions to each of the different proposals. You've got, like, Jan, motivated by profit, by power, easily swayed by Gopal's promises of, financial gain and all that. Then you have someone like Evelyn, who seems, she seems genuinely invested in making a difference, but she's also grappling with her own doubts, her own insecurities.
Makes you wonder if anyone can truly be objective when so much is at stake, But let's not forget about the orphanage amusement park. They're kind of the underdogs in all of this, aren't they?
They are. They really are. And what I think is so remarkable about their proposal is, like, the simplicity of it. While these other two projects are promising to, revolutionize technology or solve these huge global issues, the orphanage is focused on something much more, like, fundamental.
Yeah.
Just providing a loving home and opportunities for these kids, for these orphans.
And they do it in such a creative way, too, combining sustainability, education, entertainment.
Yeah.
It's like they took all the best parts of, like, a traditional amusement park and infused it with this sense of purpose, this sense of compassion.
And don't forget that personal touch either. I mean, Mahesh stepping in at the last minute like that, pouring his heart and soul into that presentation, advocating for those kids, it's clear he loves them like his own. It's hard not to be moved by that kind of sincerity,
To stark contrast to Gopal's, like, calculated charm, or Cyril's, I don't know, like, business savvy approach, I guess. You can really sense the genuine emotion behind his words.
Absolutely, and that's what makes this whole decision-making process so compelling. You've got logic versus emotion, ambition versus compassion, all playing out on this, like, grand stage.
Yeah, it's like one of those, those Shakespearean dramas with each character representing a different, I don't know, facet of human nature or something. Yeah. And just when you think you know who to root for, something happens that throws everything into chaos.
You're talking about Nadia's escape attempt?
Oh, absolutely. Talk about a tense moment. We go from these, like, high-minded presentations about changing the world to this, like, raw, desperate plea for freedom.
It's a stark reminder that even amidst all these grand schemes and power plays, there are real lives being affected. Real people caught in the crossfire.
And it's interesting how this one incident, this moment of pure chaos, it ultimately shifts the entire trajectory of the vote. Mm-hmm. But we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, it's really interesting how Nadia's escape attempt really throws a wrench into everything, right? It forces everyone to just, like, confront the human cost of their decisions, these very real consequences that go way beyond, like, spreadsheets and projections and all that. Yeah.
It's like suddenly the stakes aren't just about which project is going to get funded,
Yeah.
but about actual lives
Yeah.
hanging in the balance. You can practically like feel the tension in the room when the Sentinel Committee meets again.
Oh, yeah. You can sense the weight of that moment, especially for Carlos and Olivia having to, recast their votes with everyone watching. Remember, Carlos is still like totally reeling from that whole blackmail thing with Jan, and Olivia's caught between, well, Jan's manipulations and her own conscience, obviously.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, what would you do in that situation? How do you weigh personal risk against the greater good when the lines are so blurred?
Tough question. But going back to Carlos, that phone call from his sister, that's a real turning point, I think. It's like he suddenly sees a way out of that whole like web of financial dependence, that manipulation that Jan had him trapped in.
So when he finally casts his vote, choosing Darmat Man, you can almost hear the collective gasp. It's like he's not just breaking free from Jan's influence, but also like challenging the entire power dynamic of the whole Sentinel project.
It is. It's a powerful moment, and it sets the stage for Olivia's decision, which is even more, I think, unexpected.
Because, well, up until that point, she'd been so easily swayed by Jan, right?
Right.
Always trying to please him, echoing all of his opinions.
Exactly. But if you go back and really listen to those conversations she has with Evelyn, you start to notice a different side to her. There's a genuine desire there, to really make a difference, a kind of quiet idealism that thankfully Jan hasn't totally extinguished.
So when she chooses the orphanage amusement park, it's like, it's more than just a victory for the kids, right? It's a victory for Olivia, too. Like she finally found her voice and used it to stand up for what she believes in.
It really is. It reminds us that sometimes the quietest voices can have the biggest impact. And it speaks to the power of just like human connection, those small moments of shared understanding that can shift entire perspectives and influence really important decisions.
And it's not just Olivia's vote that's so surprising. What about Anoop? Even though Darmot gets passed over initially, it doesn't just disappear. It gets like a second chance in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. That conversation between Anoop and Professor Kennedy and Cyril, that's pivotal. It really highlights the ripple effects of these decisions, how even a seemingly unsuccessful bid can lead to these unexpected opportunities further down the line.
That's like they say, when one door closes, another opens. And in Oop's case, it's not just any door. It's a door to, like, potentially groundbreaking research, funded by someone who sees the value in his vision, even if the Sentinel project as a whole didn't.
It really is. It's a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of finding allies who share your passion, even when it seems like the odds are totally stacked against you.
Wow. So after that whirlwind of a story, with all the twists and turns and everything, it's the orphanage amusement park that comes out on top in the end. But honestly, even more than the final vote, what really stayed with me is like the complexity of it all,
Yeah. I agree. It's a good reminder that real life rarely offers these like easy answers, or these clear-cut heroes and villains. It's about navigating those gray areas, those messy intersections of ambition, compassion, the weight of our own personal histories.
And sometimes it's in those unexpected moments of chaos and vulnerability that we discover our own strengths and, that power of human connection to create real change in the world. Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive.